Hi everyone and welcome along to today's quick fix. So the question I am answering today is from a subscriber who said, how do we create depth and perspective in paintings with light and shade? So they say, I always struggle with getting darker and therefore I'm missing depth and perspective in my paintings. Everything is just too washed out and there's no contrast. When I'm adding darker colour, I often end up darkening everything, not just the shadows or the foreground. So let's have a think. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a really sort of simple, quite loose little watercolour painting for you of a landscape, which will be a nice little sort of exercise in itself. Okay, so the first thing to say is I like to think of colour that shrinks and it goes off into the distance. So colour in the distance is going to be far less vibrant. It's going to be faded, it's going to be muted. It's almost got so small that it's hard to see. So I'm going to begin with some very dilute colours. So you can see I'm really placing lots of water into my palette, and I've got some oranges and reds. I can do a little sort of autumnal kind of scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just place in a really sort of loose bit of sort of bulky sort of tree. We've basically got a bit of perspective here, a bit of something on the side here, and then in the distance I'm going to put in a very faint sky. And I'm going to allow these colours to touch each other, but not do too much sort of swishing the brush about. I just want to get a sense of the colour being not only very dilute and faint, but also softened. And so by just allowing those colours to touch, that means we're getting just softer edges. We're not having really crisp, defined outlines. Now, whilst this is drying, we can actually start to add in extra colours. So I've got some cadmium red there, but I've also got burnt sienna up here, and also we'll get some green gold in as well. And I'm just going to start to build up a little scene here. So I'm going to create a bit of sort of deeper, darker colour, sort of on the underside, I suppose, of these sections here. Get a bit of colour in there, and then because it's autumn and it's just sort of turning, and you can see I'm starting to add stronger colours, and I'm certainly adding something a bit more vibrant in the foreground. And this is all sort of possible and doable because I started off really nice and faint. So immediately we're getting a sense of the contrast of what's going on. And then I can even just drop in just a few little bits of dark brown in the background, and that's going on to the nice wet colour. So it is going to soften, but then I can add in even stronger bits of the low light in the foreground. So at this stage we've got a sense of a very sort of abstract, bit of a blobby painting, but essentially what I'm sort of trying to create here is a feeling of trees in a sort of a field, trees either side of the sky in the distance. And what I'm going to do now is take a slightly smaller brush and start working in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to be thinking back to now those slightly fainter, more distant places. So I'm going to be working in with dilute colour again, but I'm this time just able to paint in some slightly crisper bits of detail, because the paint is ever so slowly drying on the page, but you can see I'm working very dilutely. And allowing for the unpainted space to create some lovely sort of bits of sort of light and shade and texture in the trees. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry, and then we're going to add a little bit of detail in, and you'll see how we'll really focus on the foreground and not so much on the background. Now we are going to start adding in a bit more detail. So far we've been using warm tones, and so the next stage is to start to cool it down and add in low lights and things. So it's not just about darker colours, it's about cooler colours, in my opinion anyway. So I've got burnt sienna here mixed in with a little bit of Payne's Grey, and I've got a lovely sort of cold brown colour. Oh no, I've just splattered some on my... oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And then I've just got some more brown in general. I must say that what I like about these quick fixes is because it's all about practicing. I like when things go slightly chaotic, and it just reflects the fact that we're all sort of just practicing and it doesn't matter. Okay, so the rigger brush here is really fantastic for little bits of detail, especially when painting in trees. So you can see here that what I'm doing is I'm just getting a lot of water in there. What was a very dark colour can be still knocked back with water, diluted right down, and off in the distance you can be just creating really faint lines. So I'm just sort of enjoying painting in tree line sort of trunks and branches. So focusing more on the areas that are off into the distance, nice faint colours, but they are cooler colours as well. Okay, and now as we start to sort of build those colours up, we can start to also just add in extra little bits. And this tree more in the foreground. This one more in the foreground as well, just not those ones right back there. So you see it's just a process of gradually building up things. I find it's so much easier to add colour slowly and cautiously rather than to put too much on and then have to work out how to try and take it away again. And now I'm getting a lot more stronger colour on my brush. And we'll get a bit more into the foreground. So you can see colour gets stronger and bolder as we come into the foreground here. But I'm still keeping a nice light touch with it. So, and you can still very much see the effects of the unpainted space, the light and shade. Also the focus on the underside of the tree being the darker bit. And the top half of the tree being lighter. So let me get the rigger brush back in. Kind of adore the rigger brush, it's very cool. because it doesn't let you sort of be sort of too measured and controlled. You just have to sort of allow it to do its thing. And then down on the ground, the colours are strengthening too, so I might add a little bit of the actual sap green to the green gold. And a bit of Payne's Grey as well, maybe just lurking in the forest behind. But we're not sort of overloading and dominating the whole piece. We're looking for the places where the light and shade might come. And now I'm just going to add that stronger colour onto these sections we've created. And look at how the dry brushing is sort of working rather beautifully as well. It's creating a bit of detail for us. And even though we're painting in stronger colours, they're not so strong and dark that they are completely obliterating the colours underneath them. And I think that's very important. You want to keep like a healthy amount of water still in your paint, even when it is darker. And then I'm going to just begin by painting in sort of grasses and things with the rigger on this front section. And you'll see, because the area behind is still a little bit wet, that the grass is going to be, it's going to be there, but it's going to still blend off and soften. And that's really what we want for this first layer of grass, because we're just building up slowly. So build up those layers nice and slowly and in a controlled fashion. And if you want, as the paint sort of runs out on your brush, you can always place a little bit off in the distance. So we're going to let that dry one last time, and then we'll just put in a little bit more detail in the front. Okay, so the final stage, we'll just get some really concentrated colour, and then just the last few bits of grass. Okay, and that is how you create depth in paintings using lighter and darker colours. Thanks so much for watching.